Morning, everyone. I have been CEO previously, but it seems I've just been promoted this morning. That's not actually my title yet. But I'm here to talk about, we've heard the potential for green iron and steel in South Australia, and commend the state government on some of the work that it is doing to unlock that between Northern Water, the hydrogen project. But there's also other factors that through their support of the Heavy Industry Low Carbon Transition Cooperative Research Centre, that we are addressing as well to realise that vision. So what is HILT CRC? It is a cooperative research centre where we bring together over 50 partners from Australia and around the world, in particular focusing on three hard-to-abate sectors: cement, lime, alumina, and in the case of today's discussion, iron and steel. We have 4 different partners in Australia representing different ends of that spectrum in iron. So that includes WA Miners in the case of Fortescue and Roy Hill, to Grange Resources in Tasmania that produces iron pellets, to of course in South Australia, Liberty GFG with their mining operations as well as the steelworks. Complemented in that, we have technology companies gained both locally, such as FCT, that's a combustion equipment supplier headquartered here in South Australia, to Calix, that is a national Australian company developing unique technology in the calcination space, to international partners such as Prime Metals and Mitsubishi Heavy Industries. The vision around HILT is to put together that ecosystem of industry, government and research to address challenges and move forward that decarbonisation pathway. In a context of iron ore and steel, that is focused on the Pilbara, where there is the hematite resources there, which are significant in an Australian export context, and how that can be moved down the green steel pathway. In South Australia, that is around the Upper Spencer Gulf and unlocking the magnetite potential there that has been talked about by the Minister and others this morning. But it's not just Australia that we're focused on, it's the broader international opportunities as well, where we need technology partners from overseas, as well as the downstream emissions that need to be a significant contribution from our iron ore resources as well. And we bring together the industry to address research questions to unlock some of those challenges. This is our pathway to that. On one hand, this diagram can be a little bit complex, and I can speak about it for hours, but in the time I have this morning, I'll just make a couple of key points. One of the reasons that HILT looks at all these sectors is that they are interlinked. There is material and energy flow between them, and hence in the decarbonised future, all these sectors need to be considered together. If you look at the Upper Spencer Gulf, as an example, there is a range of industries there, not just steel. So the vision for that region there is, while iron is important, there are other aspects that need to be considered. Also that there are common elements between these sectors as well. So they're looking at, for example, net zero fuels is important for alumina, cement, lime, and iron and steel. And finally, apart from technical areas, there is other important aspects such as policy, market, and societal factors that need to be considered to make sure that green steel pathway is unlocked. But if we focus on the green iron and steel challenges in particular, in HILT, we have 3 different programs looking at these particular challenges. Within iron, there's 3 main steps that are required to go from the resource as it's mined to a decarbonised product. Beneficiation to remove the waste material or gangue, reduction to turn it into iron, and finally steel making. We have 10 projects covering all these different aspects in our program 1. Our program 2 looks at cross-cutting technologies. So in the case of iron and steel, this is really about getting clean energy in, and especially in the case of hydrogen. So not so much the generation, that's not our focus, but how can the scale and the supply of hydrogen realise the demand for green iron and steel production. And finally, if those technical areas are addressed and resolved, we still need to ensure that there is a good market. There's no point having a great mine or a great plant if it's not producing profitable, competitive product. So we have 7 projects in each of these areas. So I'm not going to cover each of these projects again in the time. I'm just going to give a bit of a snapshot of some of the projects in this space to give you an idea of what we're focusing on. So looking first at hydrogen, which is key We've heard from Sam before about the work that the government is doing here, but also what are some of the advantages of hydrogen in particular for green steel in South Australia. We have one project that's looking at the supply, assessing different transport, supply, storage and renewable generation options in the different locations where we have industry partners around Australia. And what this is showing, that this project is still in progress, but what that is showing is that apart from getting a hydrogen plant up and going quicker than anywhere else, there is a hydrogen cost advantage in South Australia too, compared to those other iron ore regions. This project is going to be expanded on in a new one starting shortly, looking not just at hydrogen, because that is interlinked with other energy supplies. So a broader study would also look at electricity and natural gas with two other unique features, looking at the technology options, both from a generation point of view, as well as the demand to provide infrastructure pathways. Because while the uncertainty around generation or demand may be there, action needs to happen on infrastructure now. So what are those least regrets pathways? This project will provide information to inform those decisions. Looking more within the process itself, a lot of our projects are actually focused on hematite iron ores, where in particular in the Pilbara, the gangue that is bound in there is a challenge to remove. So there is a lot of our projects are focused on how that can be managed to enable those hematite ores to feed into the green steel pathway. The good news in that sense, as we've heard before from H2 Steel and others, is that the main resource in South Australia is magnetite. So hence, the steps to enable that into green steel are technically proven. There is no technical risk around each of those ones. There's off-the-shelf technology available now. There is some work that can be done around beneficiation to ensure to get the cost of that down, and we do have work ongoing in that space as well. Finally, in the area of market studies, we have a range of different projects, predominantly being led out of Australian National University. This one is looking at different cost factors that will feed into that final pricing. So what are the market factors that might determine that? This is still in progress at the moment, but for example, some of the factors it is considering is what is that demand? Where is that coming from? As we've heard from this morning, a lot of that is automotive at the moment. It's really the consumer part that's driving that. But it's looking at those other aspects that might affect that in an Australian context. Locational factors can include aspects such as scrap supply, but also the price of labour. And that is again where South Australia, in the iron ore province, has advantages over other locations such as the Pilbara, which has a prominently FIFO workforce and hence edge costs. This project is after your input right now. The stage they're at is an expert elicitation phase where they want input from the industry on what other pathways should be considered and to be taken into account and to determine their final pricing model as well. Oh, the orchestra's playing. Must be time to wrap up. Morning tea. Almost there. So if you'd like to hear any more about some of these projects or other broader projects that HILT is doing to unlock the green iron and steel potential of South Australia and Australia, please contact myself, but also contact the research leaders from HILT itself. So Professor Gus Nathan, who's our research director, he's here in the audience today. I believe Professor Jim Hancock, who is involved in the market study, is also here today. But we have research leaders from across Australia and from around the world working on these projects. And finally, if you do want to be involved, please scan the QR code. That will take you to a website where you can contribute to that expert elicitation into the market studies for green steel. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jordan.